There is a particularly despairing way to die called drowning. Today, from a first-person perspective, I will take everyone to experience the whole process. I would like to solemnly remind you, the scenes in the middle and at the end might cause you discomfort. However, none of this concerns me. I'm only responsible for no Zuo no die. Don't court disaster, or you will pay for it. You just need to cover the eyes of your friends or girlfriend. The main feature begins. My boat was sailing on the North Pacific Ocean of Longguo. This is also where the Titanic sank. I called my friend Dan out and asked him to take over the steering. Little did I know, this turned out to be the beginning of a tragedy. You really want me to drive? You just need to keep the direction steady. Don't touch anything else. Don't worry. You go do your thing, okay? Study hard. Once you've learned, I'll find you a sister-in-law. Bro, what happened? Don't panic. It's hard if you ask too many questions. The moment I fell into the water, a large amount of seawater poured into my nose and mouth. That salty, fishy liquid instantly broke through the defense of breathing. It choked me, causing violent spasms in my chest. I struggled to break through the surface of the water, shouting loudly for Dan to save me. But this idiot didn't know how to operate the boat and seemed helpless when the boat flipped. I signaled for him to throw a life preserver to me, but by then the boat was drifting further and further away. The sea waves were like a pair of invisible giant hands, violently throwing me to the crest of a wave and then harshly slamming me towards the seabed. In the corner of my eye, that small white boat was drifting away with the waves, like a fallen leaf blown away by the wind. Dan's shouts could initially pierce through the waves and reach my ears, but in just a few seconds, that sound was shredded by the roaring sea wind, turning into a vague humming sound. Just like that, only the vast ocean remained around me, as if I had been abandoned by the world. Just as I was sinking into despair, I remembered the browsing history on my computer. There were still encrypted study materials in the Meishan Cloud Drive. No, I can't die here. I must go home! I gritted my teeth and adjusted my breathing, heading far towards the direction where the small boat disappeared. But a wave came from the side. As if someone had violently pushed me, my body instantly deviated from the direction, drifting towards the deeper sea. I could only regain my posture, repeatedly pulling my off-course body back. The ice-cold seawater was like countless fine needles, burrowing into my clothes through the collar and cuffs, tightly wrapping around my limbs. Even the air I inhaled when breathing carried a bone-chilling coldness. At first, only my fingertips were numb. I thought it was because I was stroking too hard. But soon that numbness crept up my arms, spreading to my shoulders. Even lifting an arm became heavy. The shoes on my feet were soaked with water. Every time I lifted my leg, it felt like it was dragging 2 pieces of lead. I bent down, and with great effort, managed to kick off both shoes. The moment my feet touched the seawater, I didn't feel relief, but instead, a numb stiffness came over me. I don't know when. My legs had become frozen and senseless. They could only move up and down mechanically. I could only exhaust my last bit of strength, futilely kicking the water to barely push my mouth and nose above the surface. Looking up at the sky above, I suddenly began to long to be able to drift like a cloud, no longer having to fight the icy seawater, no longer having to worry about whether I would sink in the next second. Every time I sank, I felt an invisible pair of hands, grabbing my ankles and pulling me down. The air in my chest was getting less and less. The panic of suffocation surged repeatedly like a tide. The movement of my arms stroking the water was already slow like a rusty gear. Every time I lifted them, it took all my strength. I was fantasizing again. If only a boat could pass by right now, even if it was just a glimpse of a shadow from afar, that would be hope. My calves started to feel numb. I quickly dove down and rubbed them. When my fingertips touched the skin, I only felt that it was a piece of ice without warmth. I knew this was hypothermia devouring life, which is the countdown of life. It was reminding me that death was imminent. I shouted loudly for Dan, knowing it was in vain, but the remaining instinct in my body was still struggling, as if grabbing the last straw. What if Dan hasn't gone far? What if he can hear this faint call? What if he's turning the boat around and coming back for me? The thought of wanting to survive was still making me hold on. My hands had long been cold and numb, hanging in the water like 2 pieces of swollen frozen meat. Even bending my fingers required the arm muscles to forcibly pull them. Every movement of the joints produced a creaking stiffness, as if rusty parts were reluctantly engaging. I knew these hands were my only hope for swimming, my last weapon against the seawater. Once they were completely frozen, I would truly only be at the mercy of the waves, waiting to be consumed by the cold Gradually, my hands had been soaking in the seawater for too long. The skin had long lost its original texture, turning a translucent white, like a sponge bloated by water. One press and ice-cold seawater would squeeze out. What worried me even more were my fingernails. Now they were slowly detaching from the fingertips. The ice-cold seawater poured in, bringing a dull ache. This was the last time I attempted to shout for Erdan. My body and mind were already exhausted. The color of the sky also gradually darkened. Even the cloud wisps from before were no longer visible. My body began to sink uncontrollably towards the seabed. The sound of my heart beating was getting slower and slower. The last things that flashed through my mind were all the people and things I had experienced in this life. They were all so close, right before my eyes, yet so far away. Before the last trace of consciousness disappeared, I seemed to hear a faint shout coming from afar, like Erdan's voice, and yet like the echo of the waves. Was it an illusion? Perhaps, but that faint sound made me, before sinking completely into darkness, gently raise the corners of my mouth. If this is real, then that's great. If it's fake, to be able to leave with such a thought isn't too bad either.